But we move past the politicians, the very ones who have to solve this, to the American people. Members of Congress are still receiving their paychecks, but many Americans are not. Reporter Roselle Reyes went out to talk to everyday people who are feeling the shutdown's impact in the wallet.
You know, with my rent due next week, I could take anything I can get. At this point, I haven't gotten a paycheck this month. So the free groceries is very important, very helpful.
What you are seeing are dozens of federal workers lining up for a food bank in Hyattsville, Maryland, right outside of Washington, D.C. With every passing day that the government remains shut down, more than 1 million federal workers, either furloughed or working without pay, find themselves in deeper financial strain. The partial pay federal workers received last week Friday is their last paycheck until the government reopens.
I've been furloughed before. I've never seen it like this, where, you know, people actually had to go to a food bank. Normally it's maybe a week or two or a day or two or whatever for furlough, but not like this, where there's nothing coming in.
The Capital Area Food Bank said it served more than 370 households that day, more than double the number of federal workers it was expecting. The squeeze is felt across the country. Catholic Charities of the Texas Panhandle opened the door of its Interfaith Hunger Project to federal workers, offering food boxes and pantry access.
Our take on it is if we can help them stretch the food budget out, that allows them to maintain those other things that with no income coming in, it's going to be very difficult.
Their food pantry typically serves residents 50 or older or those with disabilities, but Catholic Charities decided to extend a helping hand to federal workers. Executive Director Jeff Goldie emphasized that the efforts reflect the mission of Catholic Charities to step up and help brothers and sisters in need. So far, only 3 new families have signed up, but they're expecting more in the coming weeks.
The ones that have come in so far are typically the single breadwinner in the household, which causes some challenges. A lot of those that are not coming in yet, and even the ones that are coming in now, it's very difficult to ask for help. Don't put yourselves in harm's way. Help is out there. Come to us.
Catholic Charities USA President and CEO Carrie Robinson said in a statement, if leaders from both parties do not put an end to this unnecessary shutdown as soon as possible, even more Americans will fall into poverty, and the recovery from this setback could take months or even years. In the meantime, Catholic Charities agencies around the country, inspired by the gospel, will continue to do their best to fill in the gaps and provide life-giving, compassionate aid to those suffering most in their communities. The uncertainty of the shutdown has also raised anxiety levels among the nearly 1.5 million active duty service personnel and their families.
Part of it that's really affected us as a family is really the stress of making sure that we would get paid. Thankfully, we live on base, so we are able to continue with our housing and not have to worry about that. But it's just the stress of not knowing.
An increasing number of military families are also turning to organizations for assistance, such as the Armed Services YMCA, a military support organization that operates food banks across the country.
Since October 1st, when the government shutdown began, our food distribution sites, of which there are 22 across the country, have seen on average about a 35% increase in foot traffic. And so we have absolutely seen an increase in need. What we often find is military families, particularly junior enlisted, which is our focus area and makes up 60% of the active duty force, they often live paycheck to paycheck.
In Northern Virginia, the Armed Services YMCA is distributing baby items for military families. Baby care packages included diapers, baby wipes, lotion, and soap, which military spouse Kayla Burnham says are big-ticket items for most military families.
So if you happen to be out when you need it, it's a lot of money up front. Usually when I buy diapers and wipes, it's over $100 ticket item. That's just diapers and wipes, not including groceries and other bills that you have because kiddos are expensive.
There you go, diapers, wipes, baby soap.
Thank you so much.
Of course, thank you.
Military households with spouses that work for the federal government are also feeling the pinch, as they are now down to one income.
Military spouse, I am well aware of the great need that we have for programs like this to support families and to ensure that the family back home is okay so that the service member can be their best when they are, whether they're at a duty station or deployed.
The shutdown is also causing more stress on farmers who were already struggling with the effect of tariffs on their international markets.
Though many farmers are men and women of faith, and so they rely on prayer, or they rely on the local churches to support them. They also are looking to, advocacy for opening up the government as quickly as possible so that they can access the programs that support their farms and their families.
Roselle, Reyes, EWTN News in Depth.
Understanding just how many Americans struggle to feed their families during the shutdown will be difficult, as a critical report tracking food insecurity in the U.S. has been canceled by the Trump administration. The USDA's release of its final household food security report was delayed this week due to the shutdown. The survey has tracked the number of Americans who do not have consistent access to food for nearly 30 years under both Republican and Democratic administrations. Last year's survey found that nearly 50 million Americans struggle with food insecurity. The new leadership of the USDA canceled future reports, calling them redundant, costly, and politicized. But health policy experts argue that losing such critical data means lawmakers and researchers will have a much harder time tracking the impact of policy changes and long-term trends. An expert look now into how the ongoing government shutdown is directly impacting the American home and family, all from a Catholic perspective. We are joined by Luz Tavarez, a longtime legislative advocacy expert who serves as the Vice President for Government Affairs for Catholic Charities USA. Luz, thanks for being with us. There is a lot we could get into. First, it's estimated there are about 750,000 federal employees who are furloughed during this shutdown, meaning they are forced to take unpaid leave from work. What's at the top of your mind when you think of all of these people suddenly not working?
Well, first of all, Catherine, thank you for having me. I think what comes to mind immediately is the financial burden that many people are facing. But what I think is really important as Catholics that we dwell on is the dignity of work. People want to be able to offer their God-given gifts in service to others. And being furloughed and not being able to offer those gifts is a real problem for many people. And there's, I think, a little bit of shame that goes along with that.
That's a great reminder about the church's teaching about there is dignity and work, and it brings so much value to the individual home and family. Luz, let's talk about the role of food banks and charities right now. California Governor Gavin Newsom says he's deploying his state's National Guard to help support California food banks. And in New Orleans, Louisiana, St. Peter Claver Catholic Church has been trying to fill the gap for people in their need with their food bank program. The church's pastor, Father Johnny Gibson, says the food pantry line has been growing week by week, and he's concerned about how they will be able to keep up with their needs. Let's take a listen.
I wish that we would be able to provide for the needs of any and everybody that comes through the door. But that reality is daunting, that more and more folks are going to need food, need care, need people to show up.
Luz, can you speak to the critical role that these food banks and charities are playing right now, and anything that you can share from your Catholic Charities colleagues across the U.S. as they really are on the front lines serving those in need during the shutdown right now?
Of course. And what I think is important to point out is that for many Catholic charities, I would say most Catholic charities agencies throughout the country, the first line of interaction with a potential client is through food services. So that's really the opportunity to get to know what the real needs are that people in the community are sharing. So not only are we concerned with the dwindling supply at food pantries, but also the growing number of people in need and then not being able to interact with each of those people. I heard someone say a couple of weeks back that sometimes the only face of Jesus that someone will see is at a food pantry line. So I think it's really important that, not only that we continue to figure out a way to provide those services so that we can figure out what's at the root of the need that families and individuals are facing. But that we also realize that is our opportunity to interact with the need.
Yeah, that's a great reminder how there's that physical nourishment, of course, from the food, but there's also that opportunity to encounter a human person. On the same note, recipients of food aid are bracing for a pause to payments from the Supplemental Nutrition Assistance Program at the end of next week. The program, commonly known as SNAP, serves an average of 41.7 million people per month. That's about 12% of the U.S. population. Luz, what do we know about a potential pause to food stamps amid the shutdown, and what is your reaction to that?
Yeah, it's a real concern for us and for the people that we serve. And I think what we have to remind listeners about is that this is going to be a long-term effect, right? So often the people that we see at food pantries or in some of our other services are living paycheck to paycheck. So a real disruption in SNAP benefits will have a trickle effect on other bills and responsibilities that individuals have. I will share that anecdotally, some of our agencies around the country are having special distributions for those that have been furloughed by the government. So there is an urgency to try to meet the needs of these people that are dealing with this immediate issue.
Wow. Well, thank goodness for Catholic Charities. And we have been mostly focused on the immediate shutdowns, the immediate effects of this shutdown. But Luz, and you already hit on this, can you address the long-term economic impact of this ongoing government shutdown? Who ultimately will begin to feel the consequences of this?
Yeah, of course. And again, I think it's going to be those people that are living paycheck to paycheck. Those that don't normally rely on a Catholic Charities or other social service provider for support, but may have to now, right, to make ends meet. And we will continue to do all that we can, but our partnership with government is always useful in helping to meet the needs.
Well, finally, and on that note, Catholic Charities USA is not partisan, but does champion bipartisan relationships. Luz, do you have a message to Congress right now? What would you like to see happen on Capitol Hill?
Of course. We would all love to see an end to this shutdown, an opportunity for federal workers to continue to collect their paychecks. Embrace that dignity of going into the office and being able to provide a service. And I pray for those in the government that are trying to figure this out, because their constituents are our clients and vice versa. And we all just want the best for the American people.
Absolutely. Luz Tavarez, thank you so much for your expertise in joining us this week.
Thank you so much for having me, Catherine.